Opening statements are expected today in one trial surrounding the death of 8-year-old Secoriea Turner. You may remember she was shot and killed in July of 2020 while riding in the backseat of a Jeep driven by her mother in southwest Atlanta. The following year, charges including felony murder, malice murder, and gang-related charges were filed against Julian Conley and the co-defendant here, Julian McKinney. Earlier this month, McKinney was sentenced to 40 years with 20 to serve behind bars and the rest presumably on probation or some form of supervised release. Conley's trial is starting this week. Prosecutors maintain he fired the fatal shot that killed Secoriea, so the trial is set to start again today and last about 2 weeks. We're going to break down this trial this morning with what we can expect in Julian Conley's trial with noted defense lawyer Darryl Cohen. He was also a former assistant district attorney for Fulton County. Darryl, so good to have you back here. Thank you for joining us. We all know that this was a case that so many in Atlanta and really beyond Atlanta remember. It got national headlines since the shooting happened 5 years ago. Opening statements starting any moment this morning in court. What do we expect to happen?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. Second of all, what we expect is the possibility of a lot of fireworks, that is courtroom fireworks, verbal fireworks. What we're looking at is a man who's charged with murder, and if he is convicted, he's going to spend either most of the rest of his life in prison if he gets sentenced to life with the possibility of parole. If he is convicted and sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, then he would spend the rest of his life in prison. So all of that's really, really important. This is a case where there were armed people in a protest. It's a tragedy waiting to happen, and yes, it happened, and it was terrible. So the defense will likely say by cross-examination, they don't have to put on any evidence at all. It's up to the state to prove the case. So the state will have to prove beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt that Julian Conley is the person who fired the shot. That's simple. It's not that simple, unfortunately, because there were so many people there. So many people that were armed. And because there were others that were armed, the defense may very well be through cross-examination and innuendo. It wasn't me. I don't know who it was. It was somebody, obviously, but it wasn't me.
Yeah, you speak to that point. This all happened during a very tense time in the city. Does this case raise larger questions, though, about how cities may handle some of these armed civilian groups, especially in protest zones?
Well, it's really difficult. We need city ordinances that are enforced that prevent people from bringing weapons to a protest zone, especially when there are numerous people around who are armed, because as I mentioned earlier, it's a tragedy waiting to happen. And in this case, it happened. It'll happen again if careful we're not.
Mm-hmm. You know, so many people remember this case. They remember the name Secoriea Turner because this was an 8-year-old girl killed on July 4th. How do you expect prosecutors to leverage that, leverage the attention as well? And how can the defense counter that without coming off as insensitive?
It's difficult. As soon as a child is injured, or in this case, murdered, you take that and wave it like the American flag in front of the jury. And when you have an 8-year-old child who's murdered, who no longer has the ability to do anything for herself because she's dead, the prosecution will push that heavily, trying not to push it as far as the jury's concerned, but in reality, actually pushing it. And as the defense will have to use their cross-examine, as kids say, use your words. They'll use their words to try and show it wasn't Julian Conley. It was someone, obviously. It wasn't him. Mm-hmm. But we'll have to wait and see what the evidence actually comes to the jury, what is able to come out to the jury in front of the court.
You know, Darryl, earlier this month, and we mentioned that the other defendant in this case, Julian McKinney, entered what's called an Alford plea. A lot of people may not know what that is. So explain what that is and how this might impact the prosecution's case now against Conley.
Well, he received a 40-year sentence, 20 of which to serve, and he may or may not be eligible for parole. In this instance, Alford versus North Carolina is a case that came down when there was a person in North Carolina that said, I'm not guilty, but the prosecution has enough in my opinion and in my lawyer's opinion, to convict me. And as a result of that, I don't want to take a chance in getting the maximum penalty. And so I'm going to plead guilty, not because I'm guilty, but because there's overwhelming evidence that in my lawyer's opinion would be enough to convict me and convict me of the worst charge. That's a possibility here. And if he were to plead guilty, in all likelihood, he would get a lesser sentence other than life. He would probably plead guilty, if the court would accept it, if the DA's office offers it, to voluntary manslaughter, which would give him anywhere from 1 to 20 years on one count.
So real quick, so Conley could, hear all the testimony, hear all the evidence, and then decide later on that he wants to take that plea. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that depends. The further into the trial it gets, the less likely it is that there's going to be a compromise, that is, a plea of guilty to something. But yes, it is always possible. He has the right to try and enter a plea. And of course, his lawyer would be armed with the fact that my client will enter a plea to, as an example, voluntary manslaughter. And that way the state doesn't have to worry about an appeal. It's done, it's over, and he'll be sentenced, and the case will be put away in the annals of court history.
Yeah, this is a high-profile case. I know our crews will be in the courtroom following this. I know you will be as well. Darryl Cohen, we always appreciate your perspective. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Have a great day.
You too.